Hey friend, welcome to Self-Transformed, a podcast redefining self-care through simple fitness, nutrition, and mindset habits. I'm your host, Emily Nichols, certified personal trainer, Whole30 coach, and Taco Tuesday enthusiast. Hey, I know the struggle is real when it comes to taking care of you. I too am a busy working mom who felt physically and emotionally drained until I took action on my own transformation journey. I finally found the solutions to feeling confident and living a healthy lifestyle that doesn't feel hard, and now I'm on a mission to equip you with sustainable tools to help transform your life from the inside out, guilt-free. Together, we will simplify your health and fitness into daily habits that don't feel like another thing on your long to-do list, but daily actions that light you up instead. So if you're ready to redefine self-care and step into your own self-transformation, then let's do this. You're listening to episode 105 of Self-Transformed. Hey friend, welcome back to the show. Or if this is your first time listening, welcome. Hello, I'm Emily. I'm the host of Self-Transformed. I'm so excited you're here and would love to get to know you better. The best way to do that is to make sure to give me a follow on Instagram at EmilyNichols22 or come over to the link in the show notes and join my free Facebook community. That way we can chat a little bit more there, share some funny memes, real life stuff with each other. And I also host monthly mini workshops, and there's a lot of free worksheets and guides to help you redefine self-care within that group page as well. So follow the link in the show notes for that. So we're continuing this whole month of July. We're ending out the month talking to another one of my favorite Whole30 friends. This whole month we've been talking about Whole30 though. I haven't talked about it in a while. In all honesty, because I haven't done a Whole30 in a long time. You know, I use the principles in my food freedom method that I teach within Self-Transform You. And that's based on what I've learned through my own Whole30 experiences, but also through coaching dozens of clients through my Whole30 Anytime course. And friend, I don't want you to miss out because the end of July is coming up and the $50 off discount for my Whole30 Anytime course is going away August 1st. So if you go to bit.ly/Whole30 Anytime, you can learn more about my course there, okay? If you use the code JULYWHOLE30, all one word, all caps, it'll give you $50 off the course, okay? This is going to help you really reevaluate your habits and relationship around food, find maybe some food sensitivities, what's not agreeing with you physically or mentally, and you'll learn a little bit more about, just viewing diet culture in a different way. You know, I think a lot of people think Whole30 is just, I'm just restricting food for 30 days and I go face first in a pizza on day 31. No. If you're doing it just to lose weight, I'm going to stop you right here and say, no, that's not the program for you. What it's really going to do is just change the way you view food. You know, I've talked about this millions of times on the show. I can now eat cookies guilt-free. I just won't eat the whole package and feel like crap and then feel super guilty afterwards, okay? That didn't happen overnight. It took some time, and the Whole30 was the momentum, that keystone habit that I've talked about on the show before, to get that snowball rolling and really just transform my life, okay? And I want that for you as well. So if you're tired of dieting, you're tired of feeling low energy, you're tired of always starting and stopping something, this is going to give you what you need. So just go to bit.ly/Whole30 Anytime and use that code JULYWHOLE30 so you can get $50 off for the month. Okay, let's get into today's episode with my friend, Brittany Hammond. I was so excited to chat with Brittany again, and I've had so much fun listening back to the episode. Like, I'll probably listen to it again a third time now that the episode has dropped. Brittany and I are kind of living similar lives on opposite ends of the nation right now. So Brittany is also a Whole30 certified coach like me, and Brittany is also an Orangetheory coach like me. And you guys, we are just living like parallel lives to each other. I'm here in Indiana, she's in California, and she's just such a bright light. And we're really going to get into what it means to be good and well mentally and physically. And she's going to be sharing a little bit of her story with you, and Whole30 is intertwined in that. But I want the biggest takeaway from this today's show with Brittany is to be open to life changes, to be open to transformation and evolution, right? So we're always in a state of evolution and transformation. This past couple of years, I've been in a state of transformation. I'll keep being in a state of transformation. My life will look different 10 years from now, and so will yours. And change is scary. Change is uncomfortable, but that's that growth zone. I say that so many times, and when I'm coaching a client within Self Transform You, or at Orangetheory for that matter, when you're doing hard things, when you're getting uncomfortable, that's the growth zone. That gets you to that next level of who you were meant to be. Okay? So the story Brittany shares about her life and just the intertwinings of things happening within her life, I want you to go into this with the mindset that you are going to be open to life changes as well. Okay? And really thinking about what it means to be good and well, to be fed and full mentally and physically. So let me tell you about Brittany. She's a NASM certified personal trainer and certified Whole30 coach like me. She has a passion for fitness and overall wellness. Her life calling is to motivate and inspire girls and women to become the truest version of themselves through coaching, educational media, speaking events, and community service. So I was on her show last year, Good and Well, talking about self-care. You can check out her show wherever your favorite streaming podcast platform is. And like I said, she's currently an Orangetheory coach, and she has worked both with livestrong.com and Popsugar Fitness, which is super, super cool. So get a pen and paper handy. Make sure to stick around to the end. I'll be sharing my 3 biggest takeaways with you. So sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with my dear friend, Brittany Hammond. Brittany, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Self Transformed.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you and to chat with you again, since I got to talk to you before. And
I know. You're such a bright light. I can't wait for people to hear this conversation. But before we get started, Brittany, I ask this question to all my guests first is, I want to know what comes to mind when you hear the phrase self-transformed.
For me, I think becoming the highest version of yourself and being filled mentally, physically, spiritually, so that you can, I think that in itself is the transformation, that from being maybe someone who's waiting to be filled or desiring to be filled and needing a little bit more. So having that full on mental, where you feel so good mentally, physically, spiritually, and just all comes together and feeling filled by that, I would be to me what I think when I hear that self-transformed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love asking that question because everyone's response is completely different, which is so fun. But you're right. All those pieces have to fit together. And sometimes it's off balance in certain areas. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, let's talk about you a little bit. I kind of want to know a little bit more about your background, maybe your own transformation story, Brittany, that has gotten you to where you are today and really who you are today.
All right. So, there are, I think, a couple different ways that I've transformed. And I think just like anything, you continue to transform, you continue to change, and we will always change. We're not, you're never fully healed. You're never fully at the journey. You're never at the end. There's always, what's so great about this world and this life is you're always continuing to change and to get better. And so part of my transformation story, when I was younger, I was a victim of relationship abuse. And so that's something that kind of defined me for a long time. And then finding that transformation and becoming, me, and not becoming a woman who was under control of somebody else or felt like I was controlled by somebody else. So that was one transformation that really, that I went through, was going from a place of being a victim and being abused into then that transitioning into being free and to becoming myself. Because, if anybody who has been in an abusive relationship, you aren't really you, you're somebody else, you're somebody else's version of you, the version that needs to keep the peace, the version that needs to show up in order to protect themselves. And so I transformed from that woman into a woman who was fully herself and learning about herself and being able to be who I wanted to be, and, feeling all of that. And then physically, I've also gone through transformation as well. Just, I'm kind of the person who was always, I'd start a fitness program, and, you get started and you're like, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. And, you have all these ideas of like, I'm gonna start at 5 days a week and I'm gonna run 10 miles. I mean, I had all these goals, and I'd work out for like, a week, and then I'd start to see like, oh, look at that muscle come in, or I'd see some change in my body, and I'd be like, all right, like we made it. So I was never really consistent. And so it took me, until I was about 31. I'm 30, almost 36 now, but it took me till I was about 31 to finally start to be consistent, to say, okay, this is important to me. My physical health is just as important to me as, anything else, my mental health. So putting myself first in that way. So I started to take walks by myself, and really started working out and posting about it on social media, because, you don't post about it, it doesn't happen. So
that is true.
So, I would do that and post about it, and people would start saying, hey, you're really inspiring me with what you're doing, and you're motivating me to want to work out. And so I'm a follower of Jesus. And so when I would walk, I would talk to God, and I'd be like, God, just whatever. I just talk like we were homies, like he was just with me talking to me. So, and then one of the things that I had said is like, I'm finding that my journey and what I'm working on for myself is really helping other people. And I feel like you're calling me to do that as well for other people. So that about 4 years later than that, lots of long story short, but I became a fitness coach. So that was kind of like, I got into my own fitness mentally, physically there, turned it into helping other people. And then recently, I've been on another journey, another transformation. So same thing, that you keep transforming, you keep becoming new versions or better versions, hopefully, of the person that you were. And now I'm focusing a lot more on my own mental health, because I didn't, one of the things that I didn't have access to after an abusive relationship was therapy. It was expensive. I was young. I didn't, I was on my own. So I didn't have that. And so I didn't spend a lot of time to find out about what had happened. And it began to show up in new relationships that I was forming. And I was like, oh, who is this person? I don't know her. So now I'm on another journey of really taking time to heal myself mentally, and to find that past of me that has been so put down for so long, and then finding that new space. Because of course, here I am physically like at my peak. I'm like, yeah, I've never been this healthy. I've never been able to run this fast or lift this heavy. And then mentally it's like soup, So, yeah, it's been an ever evolving process, and it's still evolving. And, I love that about life. And I look forward to that about my journey in life, is, okay, this is my journey now. This is my transformation now. But I know that coming, or eventually, hopefully to be a mom, hopefully to be a wife. So there's even more transitions that are coming to me at some point. But those are, some of the transitions I've walked through up to this point in my life.
Yeah. I love that so much, Brittany. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that with us as well. You're so right. We're ever evolving, and being open to transformation and just listening, whether that would be to God, your own intuition, little nudges that you just feel it. You know what I mean? You just feel it, and being able to take action from there to be able to do it. Like you said, you said like you felt like God was telling you like, hey, you're here to serve people in this way. And you took action. You could have just sat on it and been like, oh, well, got into your own fears or your own head, or like, our own insecurities. But being able to take action in each of those different shifts and transformation in your life is a game changer.
Yeah, it really did. And I think for someone who had been abused, it's so much power to take that back and say, wow, it is my choice. Like I do get to choose that. When before, so far in that life, you felt like you didn't have control over what happened in your life. And to finally have that back, it felt so freeing. And then being like, oh, I can do this. And it feels good to do this. And I give myself permission to do these things, which you lost a lot of. And then finally feeling like, oh, like it's there for me to take, is just another, that full transition of power is a really great thing. It feels really empowering too, if someone has been through something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've used the term free or freeing a lot today
Hmm.
when you talked about becoming you.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the journey, right? You're always becoming you, and like you said, hopefully a better version of yourself. But the version of me 10 years ago is definitely,
Hmm.
definitely
Yeah.
totally different than the version of me now. And 10 years from
Right.
now, it'll be a different version of me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you hope it will be.
Mm.
And that's why it's so important to keep in the learning and keep in the work, whatever that looks like to you, because you will. I mean, I just look at how far I've come, in 2 years. And then it's like, wow, there is so much growth there that can happen. And there is so much that can change in your life in that time. But if I was looking at me, that person now, trying to take on the things that were in my life now, I wouldn't handle them correctly. I wouldn't be able to have the correct anything in my life to handle what was coming my way if it weren't for those other versions of myself. But if I tried to handle all the things that I've been given, or all the blessings I've been given with that version of me, like I would drop the ball for sure.
Yep. Yep. It's a learning experience. So I love that. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because this month I'm having Whole30 friends on the show to talk about Whole30. And Brittany, I really learned about you. You had posted in um, our Whole30 coaching community that, hey, you were starting your show and you were looking for people to talk to. And I looked you up online and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to her so bad. Like, this is going to be so great. So we were able to chat later or earlier last year or this year.
Yeah.
Last year was a blur, right? But I love
Yes.
but Whole30 actually was a huge part of my own personal transformation story. It was like that first big thing that I saw all the way to the end and actually finished
Right.
it. And then kind of same with you, like all the snowball effect that just happened from there, and a lot of other areas of health for me. So can you share a little bit more maybe about your Whole30 story and how you found the Whole30?
Yeah. So Whole30 for me was actually, it's kind of funny because I started with a member. I did my rounds first, and I had already always heard of it, and I had friends that had done it, and I just thought that sounds crazy and stupid. I mean, I had my own preconceived notions, and I'm like, why would you do that? That's so restrictive. I mean, I just had my own opinions on it. And I wasn't in the fitness industry at the time when people were doing that. But I just was like, why would you do that? And I had all these thoughts. And then I had a friend, or I just wasn't feeling great. I was like, I just feel sluggish and I feel just blah. I mean, for the lack of a better term, it was just so blah. And I was in the fitness industry, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm working out all the time, but I just don't feel like I have the energy. So what's going on there? So eventually I was like, I think I'm going to do this Whole30. And then one of the members, who's a good friend of mine now, she was like, oh, I've done it. I've tried it before. Like, let's do it together. So I'm like, okay. Because I mean, I don't know who knows this, but doing it by yourself is a lot harder than doing it with a friend. Having a partner in crime in this is way, to me, it's way superior to doing it by yourself, just because you want to give up about 90 times a day. Like, especially when the things get hard and you're like, I'm going to hurt everybody, or like, I want to eat all the things, having someone else to bounce that off of, or be like, walk me off the edge, is so beneficial. Or at least it was to me. So, especially if you can't afford something like a coach, because accountability, I think a lot of what a coach does is hold that accountability. But if that's not affordable for you, you have the option to just do it with a friend. So like, wrangle someone, like convince them to do it with you. But so we did it together. I actually continued for a very long time. I probably did it. I think I did it for like 90 days, continued eating that way because I felt so good.
Yeah.
Where I failed myself the first round is I didn't do reintroduction, which is so important. Another thing. I didn't do reintroduction. I just felt good. So I kept going. And then, I took a trip to New York City and just, I'm in New York City, and I'm like, I'm not going to deprive myself. So it started off as like, well, I'll just enjoy a little thing. And then before I knew it, I was eating everything. All the things. I was like, pizza, and, like, let's have wine, let's have this. So, I've done it a couple times since then, but with reintroduction. But that was kind of my first thing to even knowing what Whole30 was, but I loved the way I felt on it. And then as a coach, I actually was last year during Black Lives Matter, and I had been commenting on something, and a random stranger started having a lot of opinions and kind of coming at me and being very disrespectful to me on social media. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to respond. And I'm like getting really riled up and was like, okay, like, I don't know what to say. And then Stephanie Van Locum, she came up and like starts writing and in my response, and she's like, she doesn't need to like say anything or prove herself to you, like as a woman of color, and just like had my back. And I was like, I don't know this woman, but thank you. Like, so shout out to Stephanie, Cook by Color. She just like, she's writing me or writing for me. And so we kind of just start becoming friends on Instagram, messaging each other. And, I'm like, thank you so much for standing up for me. I really appreciate it. It's been a really emotional month, and it's nice to have allies. And so we just kind of write back and forth. And I had done the Whole30 by then, and I'm not even sure how it all came together, but she was like, hey, I think you'd be a really great Whole30 coach. And and I think, well, I've done it a couple times. I am a fitness coach. I'm like, yeah, that might sound cool. And so I looked into it a little bit. At the time, we were all in the pandemic. So I also had no job. So I'm like, well, this is kind of, it's an investment, and it is an investment. It's a worthy investment, but it is an investment. So I don't want people to think that people that are coaches are just people who felt like sharing information and don't have any like knowledge. Like, there is a process to becoming a coach. It is an investment of time. It is an investment of money. So at the time I was like, I don't have any money. So I just thought, I'm going to reach out and ask, because I'd seen some time ago from following them that they did scholarships. I reached out and was like, hey, I know you do scholarships. Like, is that something that might be an option, since we're in the middle of a like uprising politically or socially? So I was like, hey, would this be a thing? And they're like, let us get back to you. They're like, sure. And so I actually applied on scholarship and was able to become a coach on scholarship. So it was like this meeting of Stephanie, and it all just worked. It was one of those divine things that the timing and everything just happened to work out, and I had a great experience. And so that was how I got into it.
I just got chills. That is such a great turnaround story from like a really crappy person just to like comment.
Right. And I know I'm like this awful person. I'm like, I would thank you if I knew who you were for being a catalyst and be with your mean words, It's like one of those things, like what God, or what like the enemy meant for evil, God used for good, and gave me a chance to shine and be who I am now in this community. But it was a crazy little ride, because I did not expect that.
Well, that's what I love about the Whole30 community. Like, the coaches themselves, everyone is so completely different and does coaching in different ways. But at the same time, we all have a common denominator where a lot of us, it's like Whole30 is a big keystone to like our health journey or transformation and how we see food now and whatnot. And, Whole30's done a really great job over the past couple of years too, standing up more for equality and equity within everything that they're doing. They do a really great job educating us coaches as well. Yeah. So tell me this, what does your food freedom look like now? Like, would you ever do a Whole30 again?
Goodness, I do actually do resets every now and then, because I have like, my weakness is sugar. I have a very big sugar dragon. So there, and I can be an emotional eater at times when, especially during, the pandemic, and when things are so unsure, it's easy to turn to food. And so there'll be times where I notice, because part of my food freedom is enjoying a dessert. So I would have, I'd say, oh, I'll have one serving of a sweet a day. That quickly turns into 2, or like, oh, well, I didn't have that, So before I knew it, sometimes it's like, oh, well, my sugar serving has turned into from 1 serving to like 5 servings. So I'll do resets every now and then. But just trying to be mindful of what I'm eating doesn't make me feel good. And even, if I'm like, oh, why did I do this? And for me, I'm majority, I don't really drink anymore. And I did that at the beginning of quarantine, because I was like, I'm going to feel like I am having symptoms of COVID if I have a hangover. Like, I don't want to be worried that, my anxiety increases whenever I drink. So I'm like, I don't want to be scared every time I drink. So I just didn't drink. And recently I was like, okay, it's part of my food freedom. And as a part of this, I want to be able to, if I want to, enjoy something. And I had, last night, I actually had like 2 glasses of wine, and I was like, I could have had one and been just fine.
Yeah.
Or really none. And so it's about finding that. And I think food freedom can kind of ebb and flow as well, that you might decide something's a part of your food freedom because it, at one point, and then you try it again and you're like, this is not something that is worth it to me. It's not worth it to me to feel this way the next day, or it's not worth it to me. But I do try to include, I love pizzas. I know you're a taco person. I also love tacos, but my weakness is pizza also. So it's like, I try to enjoy that in a way that I know the next day I'm like, okay, like I enjoyed it. I don't have to think about it or feel bad about it. I just know that I had it and it was great, and moving on, next day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, food is so emotional for people. Same for me, Brittany, like I love cookies and I love ice cream, but I will break out. I will be bloated if I just got like chocolate chip ice cream cookies for my kids. And I almost have to like hide them from myself because since I am home, it's very easy and accessible for me to just be, and then it just turns into a habit versus like, I'm really not craving this right now. I'm just doing it just because it's there, what I mean?
Yeah.
But I love that you felt like, alcohol is always an interesting journey, I think, for people. My husband and I did our first Whole30 together in 2015. And I think 2 years later, maybe it was 3 years later, we did another round of Whole30 or something around New Year's Eve or January. And he was like, I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. Like, I just don't like the way it makes me feel. And he hasn't drank since. He was just, I just don't. Like in social situations, he's like, I have sparkling water and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still having fun and I'm in the moment. And but that could always change. I'm glad you brought up that food and ebbs and flows, and that can change. But it's all about, like for me, like I can enjoy a glass of wine or two if I really want it. And sometimes, you become more mindful and intuitive about yourself. You're like, no, I really don't want any wine.
Yeah.
If it's like a special situation or a really special kind of wine, it's like, yeah, give me the wine, but I'm not going to drink a whole bottle. I'll have one or two.
Right. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's nice to have the control, I think. And I hate using that word when it comes to food, because I think that's such a dangerous thing, is having control, or like, oh, I have to control what I eat or whatever. But I feel like I'm in control of myself, of like, okay, if I don't want something, I'm not doing it just because for no reason.
So empowering.
And I mean, it's just like, I used to just drink wine because why not, like, I mean, but, and even, and there was part of me that, because I had been so vocal about like the sober curious and all of that, in the sober community, that's like, oh, I don't want to tell people that I've like had wine again or whatever. And I don't even think I've probably shared it. And this is probably the first time I'm sharing it, but it's just like, but there is that point of it, is that you might decide, if you are sober curious, or even, whatever the case may be, if it's not obviously something that creates issues, if alcohol doesn't create an addiction for you, that you might say like, I want to try this again. Then that's what I felt. And last night I just thought I could have stopped at the one, and I really didn't even need that one. But it just showed me how much that can change, because I did used to be at a place where like, if I drank, I'm like, well, you're not going to get buzzed. Why would you drink it? Like that was my mentality behind it. And so now that part of my food freedom is that like, if it's a part of the celebration, or I feel like I want to enjoy it, I can. And if not, like and if someone has something at a winery and I want to try new things, like that's okay to like have that be a part of my journey. Or also it's okay to go and be like, no, like I'm not drinking right now. So and that's just the alcohol portion of it. But, my food freedom looks like what makes me feel the healthiest and the happiest. And that I don't, I know I'm going to have, wake up the next morning feeling clear-headed and not feeling like, oh, this is the worst. Cause you can feel hungover without even having drank. So, not having that happen to me.
Hey girl, jumping in on this conversation really quick to make sure you know that my signature program, Self Transform You, is open for enrollment. This is my signature 6-week coaching program that is going to give you a realistic and simple, keyword simple, health and fitness plan that you will actually stick with forever. This is backed by proven habit strategies, gang, in order to help you transform from the inside out and really redefine self-care through simple fitness, nutrition, and mindset habits so you can start being confident, empowered, and just lit up and living the life you were meant to live. So trust me, I know what it feels like to feel like you don't have any time to get healthy and fit, and you feel self-conscious in your own skin, yet you find yourself on the newest diet again, only to fail, feel frustrated, and gain all the way back. So I remember wanting to find a food freedom and fitness plan that would actually fit into my busy life without it feeling like another thing on my to-do list. So if you have ever found yourself saying, I feel like I'm always starting and stopping a new diet. I wish I could stop obsessing over food and the scale. I wish I liked working out. I wish I could find the time and do this guilt-free. Then Self Transform You is going to help transform your life. So go to selftransformu, the letter U.com to enroll in this 6-week program now. I will be there for you as your coach, your mentor, and your friend. I've seen it transform my own client's life, and I know it can transform yours too, friends. So again, go to selftransformu.com, and I'll see you in STU.
Been there. I love that. It's definitely a journey, and it's not something that if it's like your first Whole30 in 30 days, you're like, I got my food freedom. I'm never going to feel guilty about having wine or cookies again. Like, it's a process. And, you know, I haven't done a Whole30 almost maybe in 3 years now, I think. But same, I do like mini resets, and I eat pretty close to it other than like not. But it's helped me swapped out some things that I was using before where I was like, oh, I don't need the added sugar in this. I'm just going to make this instead. It instills so many healthy habits, which is what I love about Whole30.
Yeah, that's what definitely. I'm way more cognizant of the sugar that I do consume. And I noticed that if I have something with any added sugar in the morning, that sets my tone. I want sugar all day. But if I don't, like if I have like kind of, you know, even if it's, you know, I'll use like a date syrup or something sometimes in my coffee. But if I have that early, like I want sweets all day versus if I don't have anything that's sweet, or even like an RX bar can trigger that like sweetness for me. And I crave sweet all day versus like if I have something savory, I'm able to wait until my sweet time. You know, I usually have my like sweet time at night after dinner and stuff. So I'm usually better prepared for that than when I start the day having something sweet. It's like kind of sets my tone of this is my palate for the day, and that's what I crave. I'm like, why do I want all the, you know, I'm like, why do I want so much fruit? Like I'm just really want sweets. So for sure. That kind of has shown up as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've definitely binged on some Lara bars before in the past. I'm like, come on, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears again because, like, seriously, I feel like we're living parallel lives because we're both 30 coaches and we are both Orangetheory coaches. So you're out in California, I'm in Indiana. I know when we first talked, I wasn't coaching yet. We were talking about going through the audition process, and like then COVID hit, and I was like, well, we're not doing anything right now, which was good. I'm glad I wasn't on board quite then yet. Yeah. But tell me about that journey about becoming an Orangetheory coach, and what do you love so much about coaching there?
Gosh, that's another very funny, divine story. It seems to be the kind of the theme of my career, which is exciting to me when new opportunities come up. Regardless, I always like, if it's that divine feeling, I'm like, okay, like this is it. But so I had been working for a radio station, and I was at a space where I was like, okay, I don't really want to, you know, work here anymore. This isn't for me. I just don't feel like, I just was completely drained. I worked promotions. So if you don't know what that is, I literally set up tents at events. People would come up to me, I'd talk to them, which I love people, but I'm like, I'm too old to be setting up tents in the heat. Like, you know, it's hot as heck out here in California, and I'm like sweating and standing around. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, and I kind of had always had that calling a little bit that I shared about like the fitness or the motivation. And I was like, well, I'm motivating people, at my job. And it was a Christian radio station. So I'm like, oh, I'm motivational here. But there was still that pull of like the fitness. So I decided, but I also, when I moved out to LA, I was in, kind of looking into the acting space. And that was something that I was interested in because I did that growing up. And so I was like, well, I'm going to work the front desk at a fitness studio because I'm going to be able to work out for free, which is, one of the things if anybody who's a part of any kind of boutique studio fitness, it's expensive. It can be very expensive. So I'm like, I'm going to work out for free. So I'll get in shape. So I get ready for these roles that I'm going to have. And then also I will have a flexible schedule so I can make it to auditions. And so I'm like, great, this is cool. So this is my idea in my head. I'm like, this is going to be the best job ever. And so I had some friends that worked at a Orangetheory in Texas. And so I reached out and was like, do you know anybody that works at one in California? I'm just kind of like, I think I would like working at the front desk. Never took an Orangetheory class, just decided I was going to work at a front desk. But everybody who worked at Orangetheory loved their jobs. And I'm like, I want to love my job. So this guy puts me in touch with one of the coaches out here. And the coach says, we're not hiring at our location, but we're hiring at this location. You can reach out. Do you know where this is? It was 5 minutes from my apartment. They were just building it, hadn't been built yet. It was around the corner. And I'm like, wow. So they put me in touch. I do my interview, everything, had to do a workout and pretend I wasn't dying as part of my interview. It was like the first time I'd worked out really hard in a while. And I was like, I might be dying, but I was like, we're going to power through this interview. I get the job at the front desk. And then at the time, because it was brand new, they're like, oh, we also need someone who does social media. And I'd done social media at my last job. So I kind of just became this kind of do all at the studio. And it was brand new. So we weren't even open. We were doing pre-sales. I mean, it was like from baby stages that I was involved. So which is why our studio is kind of like my child. And I'm very, very protective of it. But because I live so close, I would do the 5 a.m. shifts. Mm-hmm. And one day the front desk person they overslept on accident. And so it's like 5:15. Everyone's like, where's the coach? I'm like, I don't know. I'm texting her, I'm calling. I'm like, where the heck are you? Class is about to start. And then she's like, oh my God, I overslept. I'll be there in a second. Can you just get people in and start class? I'm like, no. I cannot. But I'm like, okay. So I get everybody in. I kind of do I do like the warm up. She got there like pretty quickly after, but I had just kind of gotten through the walking where I'm like, all right, then just come and walk. And so I did that because I'd taken enough. I'm like, you've taken enough. You got this.
You've heard this like everyone.
Yeah, I'm like,
right?
Yeah, you've heard this a million times. So I do that, and then she gets there. It's fine. So this happens with like some other coaches. Like every time it happened, I happen to be the one there. So every time, and so people were like, you're kind of good at this. You should maybe coach. I'm like, that's not what I do. And enough people kept saying it. So eventually I got certified, and the rest is kind of history. I became a coach. And so once again, it was one of those, divine places that I was of getting in there. And I mean, I wasn't like a lot of coaches where I had an audition. I didn't audition. I didn't, none of that. It was kind of like trial by fire, like, oh, you're pretty good. And this happens. We have an opening, you're in. And I was like, okay. Like I'm a coach now. So it really worked out for me. And that's where I got started on Orangetheory, and I've been there ever since. But I mean, that studio is my baby. I've been there like since we opened. I guess we're like almost 5 years old now. But I've been there and just rocking as a coach for a while now, and love it so much and love my job.
I love all these twists and turns in your story. That's so good.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it reminds me, trust God, because it's like, there are so many times when I'm like, well, I don't know what you got for me, but it's like, anytime I just wait on him and I'm like, okay, like, I mean, all these jobs come to me. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not really, or I am, but not, I'm not sure. It's just like, here you go. Or like, here's your next step. Here's your next path. And so it's really cool to see that. So it's like one of those, like, if he did it before, he can do it again. So I just have to keep like, it's one of those great reminders when times get low of like, he's done it before, he can do it again. Just relax. So and I'm not a relaxer person. So I'm not a patient person. So it's a good reminder for me on those days.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's why all those coaches were oversleeping, to give you that little nudge. That's for
I know.
sure.
I was like, thank you guys. Hope you got
I
my
would
rest.
have just died. I'm imagining this situation. I mean, me being a coach oversleeping, I would just be like, the worst. Like, I set 3 alarms because I coach super early too. So I live about 10 minutes away from our studio, but oh my gosh, you're probably
I've had some close calls myself, like where I'm like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be up. Oh my God. And like running and like getting there as it starts. Like the panic is the worst.
Oh my
it's God. Like that, just like heart, you're like, oh God, I just messed up, but never missed one, knock on wood. But I've had those close calls where I'm like, I'm supposed to be there like 30 minutes in advance, and that's now. So
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
well, I love that you're able to, inspire people through what you're doing, as well as being a fitness coach, and what you do through your show as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about Good and Well? I love your show so much.
So Good and Well kind of was a brainchild of mine that came from, I used to walk during pandemic had started, and I would go out for walks, and I called it my walkie talkie. And so I had this, I just walk and talk and about nothing on my Instagram stories. And then people were like, oh, I really like when you do that. I'm like, why? I'm not talking about anything. I'm like, this shirt is from here. Like, look at the neighborhood. I mean, I wasn't talking about anything. People really liked it. And so then I kind of and people were like, you should do a podcast. You should do a podcast. And way years ago, probably 15 years ago now, I was a radio show host back in the day. So I've had experience doing this. So people are like, you have a voice like you should be on radio. I'm like, yeah, I used to be on the radio. So so I actually, a lot of people had mentioned like you should do a podcast. I'm like, I don't know about that. So then I had this idea but I wanted to turn walkie-talkie into something I could do with somebody else and actually do have conversations. However, during pandemic, it's like, well, how are you going to have a conversation with someone else? One, it's like, I can't have somebody join me on the walk because we're in the pandemic, and also people could live all over the country. So I was like, what if I did a live where like, we're both live walking, but it's like, you have the sounds, and it's just not conducive to having a conversation that's clear for everybody. So, so it kind of all transformed, and once again, transforms, lots of transformations, into what it is now. And I started it as just an IGTV series, thinking, because I like the video aspect of things, because I went to school to be a news anchor. So, for me, that's what I wanted to do. And I always thought I was going to be Oprah when I grew up. So I was like, we're going to have a interview, and I did some interview stuff for Orangetheory memes, speaking to some Black coaches in the community. And so I was used to that format. I liked it. So I liked it for myself. But then I had a friend who kind of was like, why, like, how are you monetizing? Like, you can monetize a podcast. Like, you're not monetizing on IG. Like, why don't you start a podcast? I'm like, we can't. I had excuses. Oh, I had so many excuses. And then I eventually was like, fine. So I made it to a podcast, but I still do prefer, for me, I love that, like doing it live on IG, and then I just turn it into that. But really the goal behind it was to create a place or a show and have conversations with people that could enhance their lives with whatever, whoever the guest was, like with you, with self-care, and just the different like people that I've had, to be someone that can add value to your life, so that you can then go out and add value to the life of others. Because I think a lot of what we do is we're not able to, same thing I've heard you say a million times, you can't pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not have. And so it's so important for us to get be fed spiritually, mentally, physically, to have that, so that we can then go out and change the lives of others. Because my biggest thing is, we are not serving the way we need to as humans, regardless of if you believe in God or whatever you believe in. You're here on this earth to have connection, and you're not serving others unless you go out and do good things with the things that you learn. You're like, oh, I have all this knowledge of all these things, but what good is it if you keep it to yourself? So my goal is to try to encourage people through, guests that I have, is growing, and then taking what they learned and then becoming better part of society, and enhancing their life. Because, the important part is that we keep passing it on, because if it stops with us, there's no one to take it on. So encouraging people to help, get out and volunteer, go change someone else's lives, because we can't keep it with ourselves. We've got to share it. We've got to spread the love. And so that's really my goal, is to encourage people to continue to share and love and just be better humans.
Like, be nice. Just don't.
Yeah. we need that right now more than ever, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of big changes for you in 2020, right?
Oh, it was the biggest year ever, which is so funny because, I mean, and I think at times I felt guilty because a lot of good things happened to me in 2020. And I know there was so much death, there was so much sadness, there was so much hurt. And I went through that too with, Black Lives Matter. And there were a lot of dark times for me, a lot of hard, painful times, but also so much came out of it. So that growth and whoever said growth is easy is a liar. Growth is very hard. Change is very hard. We're, by nature, we want the same. Like humans, we are creatures of habit. We like comfort. So it definitely, for me, it's like, wow, these all are really good things, but it's hard. And sometimes I felt guilty of having these successes and things that happened that were so good for me, because there was so much like hard times that were going on around me. But I do realize, there was some hard in mine too. And it's okay to have a good season or have a productive season, even if it's hard, but as long as and my point in that was to like, how can I use my good fortune or good things to help the world? Like, how can I put out the good that I've received to others and hopefully help them to have the same, joy or the same bright spot that I've been able to find in my life. So yeah, 2020 was very big, very busy and very big.
Well, and I'm sure like when like Orangetheory closed down, it was probably like, oh crap, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I don't have a job, and getting into fitness, you think people are always going to need fitness. People are always going to need, that's one of the reasons I was like, I'll always have a job because I'll always be able to, coach people on that. And then I was like, oh, I don't always have a job, and then I had to create my own. And I think you've done some Moxie stuff too. And so, creating my own fitness, program and all of that. So then I became this baby entrepreneur that was like, I didn't plan on becoming an entrepreneur. Like I was perfectly fine doing what I was doing. And so there was that shift of now I'm an entrepreneur. And that was a whole space I didn't see myself in either. And still learning that space as well. So, which I'm sure, you have your podcast and everything. And it's a different space too.
Yeah. But it all comes down to, like you said, Brittany, having, going through your own experiences and gaining knowledge, you got to be able to pass that on to people. Like at the end of every class, I have everyone breathe in and I say, breathe in all the positivity and energy, exhale, take it with you and pass it on to somebody else. It'll just make the world a better place and make more people realize like, hey, it's okay to have change. It's okay to be in a season of, transformation and being open to it and seeing someone like you and your story and sharing your story openly. It lets people know like, hey, full circle moments.
Yeah. And they do. And
being open.
It's incredible how much like being open to possibility that things do come full circle. And sometimes you think, well, that's weird, like that's crazy how that worked out. But it's like, for me, it's divine. And I'm like, that's where, where I was supposed to end up. So to me, it's not crazy or like, wow, can't believe that happened. It's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how my life works now, like the things that I didn't expect. I'm like, I know it will find me somewhere. And I know, and I think too, there is, and to kind of, once again, for me, things always, you find them for me in the Bible. And it's that, doing well with the little that you're given and you get trusted with more. And so for me, it's like, I've been given these little spaces to exist. I've been given Orangetheory to exist when I was at the front desk and being a good steward of what I had while I was there, being the best person that I could be, being as motivational as I could as a front desk person, like I had the influence that I had at that little space. And then God was like, all right, well, I'm going to give you more to be over. I'm going to give you more to have influence over. And And so, and same thing just in general, I think with, Whole30 or those things, like you have this little influence, and like when it's seen, you can be trusted with the small, and you continue to sew in, or you continue to find that space where you're doing your best with whatever you're given, then you get more. And it's like, if you can keep that, then that's the goal. And so for me, I'm like, I just always try to do the best with whatever I'm given, whatever that might be. Like, give 100%. I don't care. There's 2 people that sign up for my class, on Mox, like I'm going to coach you like there's 200 people. And just continuing to be just diligent and be obedient to the calling of that you have, whatever that calling may be. I think when we're obedient to that, in that space of, what we are given to be in charge of, because all of us have influence somewhere, all of us have an influence in some aspect of our lives, but being true to that. And then you just get more responsibility, and hopefully you want more responsibility, but the responsibility grows, and you're given more people to touch, and the lives to touch. And that's ultimately, for me, the goal in my life is to touch as many lives while I'm here in a positive way, so that, they can do the same. And then we all just have great lives. We're all just so good to each other.
I love that so much. Such a great place to end this conversation. I could keep talking to you forever. Like I said, I'm so excited to chat with you today. Brittany, thank you so much for this conversation and just sharing your story and your heart with my audience today. Can you share where everyone can connect with you online?
Yes. So you can find me on my Instagram, Brittany. It's 2 T's. There's a million ways to spell Brittany. So BritTTANYM Hammond, HAMMOND. That's my name. So I'm just on Instagram there. And then all my information is in my link tree there. And then also the Good and Well IG comes up. The new night will be Thursdays. So that I volunteer on Wednesdays, and I was finding that I would go straight from volunteering straight to the show. And I'm like, I don't have time for me. So part of my self-care was, this is going to be, I'm going to move the night. So Thursday nights, starting in back up in July, on Thursday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, we'll be doing new episodes of Good and Well. But the best way to find me and contact me is honestly just my Instagram. I'm always there. So you can find me.
I love it. You're such a bright light. I'll make sure to include links so everyone can connect with you in the show notes. But thank you so much again for this conversation.
Thank you so much. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope one day we get to meet in person and maybe take an Orangetheory class together. That would be fun.
Gosh, that would be so much fun. Let's do it. We'll make it happen.
Okay, sounds good.
Y'all, did you love that conversation as much as I did? Can you feel me smiling as I'm talking right now? Brittany, I love you, girl. I want to meet in person. I hope we get to have a in-person Whole30 Coach Summit someday, so I can give you a big squeeze and maybe we can go do a workout together, girl. Love you so much. So, gang, here are my 3 biggest takeaways from this conversation with Brittany Hammond. So let's talk about Whole30 first. So I love how Brittany calls Whole30 resets. She's mentioned she's done some resets here and there when her sugar dragon starts roaring, like breathing fire crazy. Like, if you've done Whole30, you know that sugar dragon lingo and what that means. So I can definitely relate to that. And that's exactly what Whole30 is. It is a reset. It is not a diet. It's a way for you just to reset and get control of when you feel like you're getting out of control, okay, when it comes to eating. I'm an emotional eater too, and an emotional shopper as well. Like, those 2 bad boys go hand in hand for me. But it took some time for me to reevaluate that and replace that with healthy habits. And that's what I've really learned through Whole30, and Brittany mentioned that as well, just incorporating new habits to help you feel your best. And finishing a Whole30 and seeing it all the way to the end gives you that empowerment to be like, dang, I can do hard things. Like Brittany mentioned, being able to see something from the start to the beginning and not giving up on yourself. That feels pretty dang powerful. And like she said, to be fed mentally and physically, to feel your best, there's just nothing like it. And I know Whole30 can do that for you, because it transformed my husband's life and my whole family's life, to tell you the truth, and my clients since 2015. So, number 2, be open to new possibilities. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I wanted you to come into this episode with an open mindset, to be open to evolution and transformation in your life, even through crappy experiences. Okay? There are things that happen in your life for a purpose. Okay. And sometimes that leads you down a road you never would have went down if you didn't have that crappy experience. Okay. Let me give you an example. So, as you know, my son just had open heart surgery. And when he had his first surgery when he was 8 months old, that's become part of his story. That's become part of our narrative and has made us even closer as a family. And it really led me to having a job in a nonprofit where I was speaking about heart health. I grew my public speaking skills. I grew my development skills. And it landed me in an industry that I would have never been in. And it really led me to wanting to take care of my wellness physically at first, then mentally and emotionally, spiritually. And it's led me to here today with you. Okay. So there's all these little snowball effects that can happen in your life, even when crappy things happen. Okay. So it's okay to live in the moment and be like, this really sucks. I don't know what the purpose is. You may not see a purpose now. You may not see it for a long time, but it's okay. And know that these experiences are going to take you somewhere else that's even better. Okay. And like Brittany mentioned, sometimes we just got to listen. We just got to listen, whether that is to God. I know I have felt God talk to me before on walks by myself, or just your intuition as well. Your gut knows what's up. We have talked about that on the show, not just even physically, but mentally as well. Okay. And then number 3, I think this is really important. Sometimes we forget this. Pass it on. You'll be given more and you can handle it when you are passing on more to others, when you are coming from a place of service and helping others, when you have been given a gift, whether that would be an experience or a talent or skill that you have. Why not serve others and help them feel amazing as well? It doesn't have to come from a fitness and nutrition lens, kind of like where I come from. It could be from you're really talented at something at your job and maybe you're mentoring someone coming up out of that organization. Maybe you're volunteering at the Ronald McDonald House, serving meals there because maybe you had stayed at there at one point when your child was sick. So there is so much power in helping others. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit sometimes that we, like Brittany mentioned, we all have influence somewhere. You just have to be willing to show up and be willing to pass that on to others with the sole purpose of serving others and helping them feel lit up. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to go give Brittany a follow. I'll make sure to include a link to all of her things in the show notes. And I would love for you to come and engage with us on Instagram. Let us know what your biggest takeaways from today's show was. So I'm sending you all lots of love. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to go to bit.ly/Whole30 anytime and use the code until the end of August 1st. It's gone, girlfriend. It's gone. Use the code JulyWhole30 to get $50 off my Whole30 Anytime course. You can also read a few testimonials from some of my clients who have had a life-changing experience doing a Whole30 with me as well. So as always, sending you all lots of love, and I'll catch you here next week.
Hey girl, real quick, before you go, if you love today's show and know your girlfriends need to hear this message too, then grab a screenshot, post it to your Instagram stories, and tag me at EmilyNichols22, because the more mamas out there hearing this message, the more empowered we'll all feel to take care of ourselves so we can pour from a full cup. Or the number one way you can thank me for this podcast is to leave a rating and review in iTunes. That way, more mamas will find the show here too. Love you and appreciate you, girlfriends. See you next time.